Yelena Belova was born in the Soviet Union in 1988 to 1989. When she was 3 years old, she was assigned by Dreykov to play the role as the younger daughter of Alexei Shostakov and Malena Vostokov, with Natasha Romanoff playing her older sister. They then moved to the United States of America to Mount Vernon, Ohio, on Soviet espionage assignment, although due to her young age, Belova was unaware of the assignment and believed them to be her real family. 3 years later, in 1995, while playing in the backyard with Romanoff, she scraped her knee and called for her mother. Vostokov came and helped her up, and the three went inside. After dinner, Shostakov came and delivered news that the family had to leave within the hour. As they drove away, Shield attempted to arrest them with help from the local police, but Shostakov resisted them with a gun. Vostokov, Romanoff, and Belova boarded a plane while Shostakov rode on the outside. The family flew to Cuba, and with their mission over, the family was separated. As soldiers attempted to pull them apart, Belova clung to Romanoff while her older sister held the soldiers at gunpoint after taking one's weapon. Shostakov then came and comforted them, telling them that they were tough and that everything would be all right. The two were then sedated and brought to the Red Room. There, Belova was separated from Romanoff and trained to become a Black Widow, going on multiple assignments. In 2016, Belova was sent to Morocco on an assignment with a team of widows to retrieve the substance known as red dust, a substance that could break the mind control that kept the widows all under Dreykov's orders and rule. The team managed to locate the target holding the cure, a former widow named Oksana. Oksana managed to evade them, but Belova caught up to her. Oksana caught Belova's hand when she attempted to stab her, only for her to drop the knife, catch it with her other hand, and stab her in the stomach, then twisting the knife, but not before Oksana managed to free Belova by spraying her with the dust. Freed, Belova was horrified at what she had done, but Oksana told her that it was too late for her and begs her to free the other widows before bleeding to death. Determined to keep her promise, Belova cut out the tracker in her leg and went dark. However, realizing this would only last so long, she came up with the idea to send the vials of red dust to Natasha Romanoff, who was now an Avenger, figuring she would have the resources to keep the red dust safe. Laying low, Belova hid out in a safe house in Budapest, Hungary, provided by Rick Mason, only to be reunited with Natasha Romanoff. The two confronted each other at gunpoint, which led to a brutal confrontation as the two of them fought throughout the apartment. The brawl concluded with the sisters choking each other with a curtain, so they called for a truce. Romanoff inquired as to why Belova sent her the red dust, so she explained what it was and how she thought Romanoff would have gotten her fellow Avengers to use them to bring down the Red Room. This shocked Romanoff, as she believed the Red Room, and in addition Dreykov, were no more. Belova asked Romanoff to recount her mission in Budapest to kill Dreykov, so she did, but when Antonia Dreykov was brought up, Romanoff went silent. At that moment, Black Widows surrounded the apartment, and Belova and Romanoff were forced to escape by way of the rooftops to the other side of the complex, where Belova's motorbike was. They pushed a pipe over the side of the building to escape. A widow also jumped on, but lost her grip and fell into the alley below. Belova ended up crashing through a window while Romanoff landed in the alley next to the widow, who committed suicide in front of Romanoff against her will. After recovering, Belova reconvened with Romanoff. Romanoff asked her how many widows were out there, and Belova replied enough and went to the motorcycle. Romanoff drove it while Belova jumped on behind her, and the two tried to escape from the widows. However, they soon crashed and were thrown off the motorcycle. In order to keep escaping, Belova hijacked a car, forcing a Hungarian man out by gunpoint, to Romanoff's displeasure, and jumped inside. As Romanoff drove them through the city, Belova asked what plan Romanoff had to evade the widows, but Romanoff replies that her plan was just to drive them away. In order to get rid of a widow pursuing them, Belova opened her car door, causing it to hit a pole and fly into the widow, knocking her out. They were then pursued by Taskmaster, who shot an explosive arrow at the car, causing it to topple over and land in a subway station. Belova and Romanoff got out of the wreckage, with Belova injuring her arm, but Romanoff told her not to bandage it so that they could create a fake blood trail to lure Taskmaster away. The two sisters hid an event and waited for Taskmaster to lose track of them, with Romanov explaining what happened on her mission in Budapest. Once they were in the clear, Belova and Romanov went to a gas station to get medical supplies. While they were there, Romanov asked if Belova knew where the Red Room was, but she didn't know, as Dreykov moved locations constantly. Belova questioned Romanov on why she never attempted to contact or find her, which Romanov replied was because she thought Belova was living a normal life and didn't want to see her. But Belova didn't believe this, as she saw it as Romanov just not wanting her to tag along as she saved the world with the Avengers. Belova then asked about Romanov's posing during fights, which she defended was done during her attempt to do some good, but Belova called them both out for being still trained killers, only that Romanov was viewed as a hero. As they shared drinks, Romanov stitched up Belova's arm as she explained more about the red dust and her time with the Red Room, expressing her infuriation at being made to kill with no independence and Dreykov still being able to abduct and brainwash young girls like them with no consequences. They then talked about their real parents, with Belova expressing her fantasy backstory she made for herself and Romanov, and that she wanted to get a dog. With nowhere to go, Belova decided to help Romanov kill Dreykov and end the Red Room together. Belova also got a vest, which was the first thing she's ever bought, as she wanted to do things now that she was free. Belova told Romanov this as they drove, with Romanov, knowing that Belova was just vying for her approval, initially teased her about the vest, but later admitted that it was cool. Belova and Romanov arrived in Norway, where they were met by Rick Mason, who supplied them with a helicopter instead of a jet, so Belova teased him. Belova boarded the aircraft, and she and Romanov changed into the white suits provided by Mason as they went to rescue their adopted father. Flying to the 7th Circle prison in Russia co-piloted the helicopter as Natasha Romanov instructed Alexei Shostakov in escaping from the prison. Belova stayed in the helicopter as Romanov went down to assist Shostakov, but soon came under fire, so she used a missile launcher, which caused an avalanche. Now with time running out, Belova quickly picked up Romanov and Shostakov before they were killed in the avalanche, successfully escaping from the prison. With Shostakov on board, Belova punched him in the face, which made him ask if she was on her period. So Belova corrected him by telling him how she no longer had reproductive organs due to the Red Room giving involuntary hysterectomies. When they asked Shostakov about the Red Room, he did not where it was, so he suggested they ask Yelena Belova, who could be found outside of St. Petersburg. Belova noted that they were low on fuel, but Shostakov told her they could make it. Upon landing somewhat roughly due to the helicopter having run out of fuel, Belova and Natasha Romanov were hugged by Alexei Shostakov, who voiced how proud he was of his daughters for their respective achievements. A disgusted and angered Romanov quickly broke from his grasp as Shostakov held Belova, patted her, and gave her a kiss on the forehead. However, Belova remarked on how bad he smelled, due to having been in prison, and broke the embrace as well. Eventually, the three arrived at Yelena Belovanov's farm, where the reunited family sat at a table for dinner. Belova sat down with Romanov, Vostokov, and Shostakov, who had changed into his Red Guardian suit. They then discussed Vostokov's involvement in the Red Room as she revealed that their successful mission in Ohio 21 years ago was to achieve the ability to effectively mind control a person and take their free will from them, with Vostokov demonstrating this on one of her pigs, Alexei, by commanding it to stop breathing before reviving it. As the conversation became more heated, Romanov bluntly denied the significance of their family and claimed that it wasn't real. A heartbroken Belova, however, voiced how she believed their family was real even though she knew the history behind it, and vented her anger at Vostokov and Shostakov for their part in her becoming a killer with no free will in the Red Room, and Romanov for doing nothing to help her once she managed to escape and stormed off. While in a bedroom, Shostakov joined her, and despite insisting she did not want to talk, he stayed anyway in silence with her for a little while. However, he ended up telling her a story of a fishing incident with his father that had gone wrong and ended with his father having to urinate in his hands to prevent frostbite from taking over, much to Belova's annoyance and disgust as she stopped him and questioned the relevance of the story. Shostakov attempted to explain to her that fathers will try to do their best for their children, but Belova scoffed at this, reminding him that since they freed him, He had done nothing but essentially complain about how bored and annoyed he was with the assignment of having to act as her father, despite the fact that to her he had meant everything and she loved him like a father, before telling him to get out. Shostakov seemed to comply before stopping and began singing American Pie. This was Belova's favorite song as a child, and she smiled upon hearing it, delighted to bond with her father. Together the two sang the song. However, this moment of bonding was interrupted when the Black Widows located the farm and subdued Shostakov with numerous tranquilizer darts. Belova ran out of the room, only to be shocked unconscious shortly after by Vostokov, Romanov in disguise, and taken hostage upon the Widow's helicopter. Arriving at the Red Room Academy, Belova, still unconscious, was taken to be operated on so that Dreykov would know how the red dust altered the chemicals in her brain. Belova was contacted by Yelena Vostokov, who had put a communication device in her ear, informing her of a blade hidden in her suit. Belova used the blade to cut herself free and kill the surgeons, and then went to retrieve the vials to free the Black Widows. Making her way through the ceiling vents to cold storage, Belova dropped down, making a fighting pose like Natasha Romanoff, much to her disgust. Belova swiftly eliminated a guard, located the vials of the red dust, and began making her way to the Widows, all while being updated by Vostokov on her progress. After learning that the Red Room was falling from the sky, Belova entered the training room, only to find it empty. Belova eventually found all the Widows, who were in Dreykov's office brutally attacking Romanov. Having wrapped the vials around a grenade, Belova threw it over the Widows, causing the red dust to burst, ultimately freeing them from Dreykov's control. Belova helped her sister up and removed a knife from her back, and began to evaluate with the other Widows, as Romanov stayed to collect the data on the other Widows. Seeing Dreykov escaping in his helicopter, Belova ran after them on the runway while the Red Room exploded behind her. She climbed on top of the helicopter next to a propeller and started to put together her baton, intending to stick it in the propeller and break the helicopter, preventing Dreykov's escape in a self-sacrificing move. As Dreykov ordered his men to shoot at her, Romanov ran out of the Red Room and saw her on the helicopter. She begged Belova not to do it, but she instead yelled out about how their adventure was fun before plunging her baton into the propeller, destroying the helicopter and throwing her over the edge of the ship. As Belova was in free fall, plummeting towards the ground, Romanov, also jumping off, caught up to her, having acquired a parachute, and attached it to her as they fell through the sky. Romanov held onto Belova as they descended, but she soon had to let go when Taskmaster came after them, allowing Belova to land safely while they fought in the sky. Belova was found on the ground by Natasha Romanoff, who apologized for not coming back for her when she left the Red Room, revealing that their family was real for her, too. This deeply touched Belova, and the two sisters emotionally embraced each other, as they were then rejoined by Yelena Vostokov and Alexei Shostakov. When Thaddeus Ross and his soldiers were approaching, Romanov told her family to escape and that she would stay, but they all objected to leaving her behind. However, Romanov was determined, as after repairing her family, she decided to go fix her Avengers family, so Belova decided to give Romanov her vest. Romanov gave her the last vial of red dust so she could help the other Black Widows. The freed Widows landed, and Belova, Vostokov, and Shostakov departed with them, saying goodbye to Romanov. Belova, alongside Red Guardian and Yelena Vostokov, mounted an effort to search the world for remaining Black Widows to free them from Dreykov's control and deprogram their chemical-altered mind controls. In 2018, Belova and Sonya tracked down Anna and infiltrated her house, where they approached the ex-Black Widow herself. Anna engaged in a fight with them, with Belova pointing a gun at her face, but Belova did not shoot, so Anna was able to disarm her. Eventually, Belova managed to gain an upper hand, and while Sonya pinned Anna to the floor, Belova sprayed her with the red dust. However, to Belova's surprise, Anna was revealed to not being brainwashed by Dreykov, as she managed to purchase the house by working as an assassin for a living. After making a truce, Belova and Anna talked about her mission to save ex-Black Widows, and Belova shared her results, saying that although her mission was difficult, it was worth it. Anna then asked Belova about Natasha Romanoff, to which she replied that her sister was doing well. Sonia then jokingly said that after they are done, Belova could reunite with Romanov and live in New York City together, after which Belova left them to take a bathroom break. In the bathroom, Belova stared at the mirror, slowly collecting herself before turning on the faucet. During this time, Belova found herself disintegrating into dust and could barely react before she found herself instantly rematerializing. Belova became increasingly confused upon noticing the walls beginning to change around her and stepped out of the bathroom to see the house completely renovated along with a man and a little girl in the living room. Belova then raised her weapon, demanding to know what was going on and asked the man who he was, but Anna came in and defused the situation. She told her husband and daughter that Belova was an old friend. Anna informed Belova that it had been 5 years since they last met, and that half of the world's population had also been erased from existence as well, during which she married and adopted a daughter. Anna suggested that Belova perform contract work and offered her to stay at her house for a while, but Belova, realizing that the year was now 2023 and that she missed out 5 years of her life, declined and told her that she needed to contact her sister and let her know that she was okay. Belova eventually discovered that Natasha Romanov had died and erected a gravestone for her in Ohio, as well as acquiring a pet dog whom she named Fanny. Abandoning her previous mission of freeing other Black widows, she instead met Valentina Allegra de Fontaine and worked for her on target operations. In December 2024, Belova paid a visit to Romanov's grave, straightening out the stuffed animals, cards, and flowers around the grave while mourning the loss of her sister. She whistled the beginning of the tune that Romanov would usually return, but no one responded, leading Belova to become emotional. While Belova was mourning, she was interrupted by de Fontaine blowing her nose. Belova promptly told de Fontaine that she was on holiday leave and wanted a raise. De Fontaine said she could earn it with her next assignment and showed her a picture of Clint Barton, claiming that he was responsible for Romanov's death and indicating him as the next target. Later that month, Belova, sporting a black suit and night vision goggles, traveled to New York City and tracked Clint Barton down. She ambushed him on the roof of a building overlooking an apartment complex and started fighting against him. Barton held her off and threw out an arrow containing a zip line for Kate Bishop. Belova was surprised that Barton was not alone when Bishop arrived on the zip line and, not wanting another person to get in their way, she slammed Bishop into the ground. Maya Lopez then arrived and joined in on the fight, engaging Belova, and during the fight, Bishop managed to knock her gun out of her hands. Belova immediately attacked Bishop, attaching a grapple to her before flinging her over the side of the roof, causing Barton to run over to save her. As Belova fought off Lopez to get to Barton, Bishop returned on the roof and shot a trick arrow at them, causing a disorienting sonic boom and blinding light that separated them. Belova grabbed her head to recover from the boom and then used her widow's bite and taser disc against Lopez, who then fled the scene after Bishop shot an arrow into her. This allowed Barton to get the upper hand on Belova and tear off her disguise. Before Barton could speak to her, Belova stunned him with her bite, but before she could do anything else, Bishop aimed her down with her bow and arrow. After coming to terms that she was outnumbered, Belova glared at Bishop menacingly, discouraging her from taking the shot, and dropped a grappling hook on the ground before jumping off the roof to make her escape. Afterwards, Belova changed into civilian clothes and infiltrated Kate Bishop's apartment through a broken window and prepared mac and cheese to eat. When Bishop arrived, she remained hidden initially, but when she stepped out, Bishop threw a hot sauce bottle at her, in which she caught. She then told Bishop that their fight had made her hungry and asked her to sit down and talk with her. Bishop, who was defensive, remained at a distance and remarked that Belova had tried to kill her and she did not want to talk to her. Belova gasped and proclaimed that she did not try to kill Bishop. She stated that she had attached a wire to Bishop and if she really wanted Bishop dead, it would have happened already, presumably as she entered the apartment. Belova then asked why there was only one fork, stating the need for more utensils, but Bishop said she was the only one living there. Belova brought the food to the table and Bishop reluctantly sat down. Belova ate, while ignoring Bishop's tension and stares, enthusiastically remarking how she was in New York City. She said she wanted to see places of interest such as the newly redesigned Statue of Liberty and the Rockefeller Center. She said she knew Bishop was originally from the city. She then said that she knew about Bishop's parents, her education career, and that she had recently rescued a dog, which she found admirable. Bishop asked her what she was doing there, asking if she was there to speak with Barton, in which she said plainly she was there to kill Barton. Bishop defended Barton and protested that he was a hero and an avenger, having saved the world several times. Belova angrily said that Natasha Romanoff had saved the world and how her death influenced her idea to take out Barton. She recalled that Barton had killed several people during his time as Ronin and asked why Bishop continued to like him. Bishop countered that Romanoff and Barton were friends and Barton was a good person. Bishop then deduced that someone hired Belova and pointed out that that person may have ulterior motives. At this, Belova decided to end the conversation and proceeded to ask for Barton's location, but got no details. She then went to the window and warned Bishop not to get in her way again before jumping down using her grappler. The next day, Belova followed Eleanor Bishop to a hotel and witnessed her meeting with Wilson Fisk. Figuring out she was the one who employed her against Barton, she texted Bishop about her discovery and sent a video of the duo as well. Belova went to the Rockefeller Center and infiltrated the Christmas party held by Eleanor Bishop in order to find and kill Clint Barton. She walked past Orville, who was stationed at the door working undercover for Barton and Kate Bishop, declining his offer to take her coat but not garnering any suspicion from him. Belova tracked Barton through the party, finding him. Belova followed Barton to an elevator, where she was intercepted and confronted by Bishop. Belova told Bishop she was only there to kill Barton and tried to stop Bishop from following her into the elevator as she pursued him, but Bishop forced her way in anyways. Bishop tried to press the buttons for other floors on the elevator to delay Belova, so Belova slapped her hand away. The two fought briefly with Bishop slapping Belova across the face, much to Belova's frustration. After Belova tore Bishop's dress off, revealing her archery uniform underneath, Bishop managed to press every button on the elevator. Belova took off her jacket, revealing her own uniform underneath, tossing it at Bishop and running away on the next floor the elevator stopped at. Belova ran through the building in an attempt to catch up to Barton as Bishop continuously tried to stop her. Bishop used her body to block off a doorway, asking Belova to stop this and go have a drink with her, which Belova agreed to, but only after she killed Barton, kicking Bishop in the stomach. The two kept fighting through multiple offices in the building, and as they reached the far side of the building, Belova tried to use her baton to smash open a window for her to jump out of, but it was knocked out of her hands by Bishop, who threw a set of clackers at her hand. Belova complimented Bishop on her throw and told her that the fight was a lot of fun, and then told Bishop bye as she used her grappling hook to jump out of the window. As Belova slid down the side of the building, she came across the window that Barton was standing at and attempted to shoot at him. Barton managed to move out of the way in time thanks to Bishop's warning. Belova tried to shoot at Barton a few more times as she slid down the building until she reached the ground. Belova waited until Clint Barton was alone and went to the ice skating rink just as Kazi Kazimierczak was about to shoot him. Belova tackled Barton, knocking him onto the ice to fight him herself. Belova asked Barton to tell her what really happened on the day that Natasha Romanoff died. Barton told her that Romanoff had sacrificed herself to save the world, but Belova did not believe him. Belova attacked Barton as Barton tried to defend himself and convince her that he was telling the truth. Barton was not fighting back, but eventually managed to put Belova in a hold as he once again tried to plead with her to listen to him, but she still refused to believe him, breaking herself free of his hold. Belova asked Barton why Romanoff would sacrifice herself for Barton, and Barton explained that he tried to fight her for it. Still not satisfied with Barton's answers, Belova began wailing on him with her batons as Barton begged her to stop. Belova pulled out her gun and approached Barton to finish him off as he laid on the ground. As she walked towards him, Barton began to whistle Belova and Romanoff's secret whistle. As she heard the whistle, Belova stopped in her tracks and began to cry. She asked Barton how he knew the whistle, and Barton answered that Romanoff used to talk about Belova all the time. He told Belova that Romanov loved her and always wanted her to be safe. Belova expressed her envy that Barton got to spend so much time with her sister and her frustration that she was not there to stop her from sacrificing herself. But Barton reminded Belova that there was no stopping Romanov. Belova put her gun away and reached out her hand to help Barton stand up. Barton told Belova he was sorry, and she nodded, before slowly turning around and walking away. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in December 1991, Shostakov found himself no longer operating in combat missions as Red Guardian and had his uniform taken from him. In 1992, Shostakov was assigned by Dreykov to go undercover in the United States of America in order to infiltrate the North Institute in Ohio, which was a front for SHIELD, which was itself deeply infiltrated by the fascist organization Hydra. Shostakov begrudgingly accepted the mission, as it was not going to be as action-packed as he was used to, and was assigned to live with 3 people who would act as his family: veteran Black Widow Yelena Vostokov, and Black Widows in training Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova. The 4 lived in Ohio for 3 years until 1995. The 4 became close with one another. Shostakov and Vostokov developed genuine feelings for one another, while Romanov and Belova formed a sisterly bond and viewed Shostakov and Vostokov as their parents. In 1995, Shostakov obtained the file that he was assigned to and set the North Institute on fire. However, this put them on the radar of SHIELD, who were investigating Russian sleeper agents in the United States of America. Once Shostakov arrived home, he and Yelena Vostokov whisked Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova away at night. Arriving at a hangar, Vostokov, Romanov, and Belova boarded a small plane as Shostakov cleared the way for them to take off. As SHIELD and local police caught up with them, Shostakov was forced to run to catch up with the taking off plane. He grabbed a hold of the plane's wing and began to shoot the tires of the SHIELD vans and police cars, disabling them so the 4 could make an escape. The 4 eventually made it to Cuba. After landing, Shostakov was greeted by Dreykov and was briefly debriefed as Yelena Belova and Natasha Romanoff tended to Yelena Vostokov, who had been shot in their escape. As Vostokov was taken away, a soldier tried to separate Belova from Romanov to take her to the Red Room Academy, but Romanov disarmed him and threatened to shoot anyone who approached the 2. Shostakov talked Romanov down and gently took the gun away from her, reassuring her that she and Belova would be okay because the 2 were strong. Sometime later, Shostakov and Dreykov had a falling out, resulting in Dreykov having Shostakov incarcerated in the 7th Circle prison in Russia. There Shostakov languished for decades into anger, self-pity, and reminiscing over his glory days, with his only solace coming from receiving fan mail from his enduring admirers and regaling his fellow prisoners with war stories, some of which with questionable authenticity. One day in 2016, Shostakov was arm wrestling a number of his fellow prisoners, telling a fabricated story of how he faced off with and defeated Captain America in the 1980s. However, Ursa Major, a fellow prisoner, questioned the validity of his story and pointed out that Shostakov couldn't have fought Captain America since he was still frozen in ice at that time. In response, Shostakov broke Ursa's wrist with his enhanced strength. Shostakov was then called to the mailroom to receive mail, where he was taunted by the guards who mockingly referred to him by his old alias and ate the pastries that were mailed to him. Shostakov then collected the remaining mail, which included an action figure of himself in his Red Guardian uniform, which caused him to reminisce. However, the head of the figure popped off and revealed an earcom which Shostakov put in and was instructed by Natasha Romanoff to head to the south door and not make a scene. Shostakov, however, wanting to use this opportunity as a last chance to get revenge on the guards, smashed through the glass of their pod and brutally assaulted them, stealing back one of his cookies in the process. The ensuing commotion caused a prison riot, with guards mobilizing to capture Shostakov and prisoners following suit. Shostakov broke down a steel door and made his way to the prison courtyard and leapt to the upper levels of the courtyard, only to be tasered by a guard and fall back down to the lower levels. With the aid of Romanov, he made it back up to the upper level and barely escaped an avalanche that overwhelmed the prison complex. Shostakov, although overjoyed to see Romanov and Yelena Belova, was met with a cold reception from the both of them. When asked about by Romanov whether or not he knew the location of the Red Room, Shostakov admitted to knowing nothing, and when confronted about his supposedly close relationship with Dreykov, Shostakov revealed Dreykov was the one responsible for his imprisonment. Shostakov then went on a tirade about how he was the Soviet Union's first and only super soldier, and how he could have achieved more than even Captain America himself had it not been for Dreykov, assigning him to the mission in Ohio and incarcerating him. Instead, Shostakov offered the location of Yelena Vostokov, who was in St. Petersburg. Despite Belova's protests that they wouldn't make it that far due to a low fuel level, Shostakov insisted they would, only for them to crash shortly after. After the crash, Shostakov, Natasha Romanoff, and Yelena Belova proceeded to walk to St. Petersburg on foot. On the walk, Shostakov proclaimed again how proud he was of them, with Romanoff becoming an Avenger and Belova one of the most prolific child assassins of her generation. He then asked Romanoff if Captain America ever mentioned him. They were soon greeted by Yelena Vostokov and invited inside her home. Shostakov found his uniform and put it on, although he struggled to do so, as he had gained considerable weight during his time in prison. However, he managed to put it on and presented himself to Vostokov, Romanoff, and Belova, with only Vostokov giving him approval. At the table, the four ate dinner, where Shostakov flirted with Vostokov, much to Romanoff's disgust. When asked about the Red Room, Vostokov explained to the three that the North Institute was a front for S.H.I.E.L.D. and was controlled by Hydra scientists working on the Winter Soldier program who had constructed the first and only cellular blueprint of the basal ganglia, which controls human cognition, ergo they stole Hydra's research on mind control. Vostokov then demonstrates her work by presenting her pet pig, named Alexei, by commanding him to do a number of tasks, which he obeyed, including stopping breathing. When asked by Belova whether or not she knew who Dreykov controlled, Vostokov denied any knowledge, but Shostakov did not believe her. An argument ensued in which Shostakov claimed to be Dreykov's patsy and was sold a false ideology. Romanov then scolded Alexei, calling him an idiot and Vostokov a coward. After Romanov claimed that their family wasn't real, Belova tearfully argued the contrary and recalled her sadness that the only good part of her life was a lie, and expressed her anger towards Vostokov for creating the very thing that robbed her of her free will. When Belova angrily left the table, Shostakov comforted Vostokov and left to console Belova. When Shostakov entered the bedroom that Belova went to, she told him she didn't want to talk. Shostakov agreed, but went on anyway and told her stories from his past. When he tried to explain what fathers will do for their children by telling her the ice fishing story from his childhood, Belova expressed her hurt that all he ever did was complain about his lost opportunity to be a world-renowned hero, and her feeling that Shostakov only ever saw her as an unwanted assignment when conversely, Belova idolized and loved him. After Belova accidentally refers to Shostakov as the Crimson Dynamo, Shostakov absent-mindedly corrected her, to which Belova angrily tells him to leave. Shostakov appeared to oblige, but then he began to sing American Pie, Belova's favorite song from her childhood, and the two reconcile. However, their bonding is short-lived, as they are ambushed by the Black Widows. Shostakov is hit with a tranquilizer dart, though appears to have no effect on him. He confidently pulls the dart out, but is then hit with several more, which quickly knocks him out and is taken away to an aircraft. Shostakov woke up on board an aircraft headed upwards, piloted by Yelena Vostokov. When he overheard that they were about to land, he asked Vostokov why they were continuing to ascend, but then noticed that the Red Room was a veritable floating fortress. Shostakov is then sedated by one of Dreykov's henchmen and loses consciousness again. Shostakov woke up in a cell next to Natasha Romanoff and, after collecting himself, proceeded to apologize for his misdeeds as a father and ask for her forgiveness. Unexpectedly, the cell door opened, and when he asks why, Romanoff revealed that she designed it, much to his confusion. It turns out Romanoff was actually Vostokov in disguise. After seeing Vostokov use an earpiece to communicate with Yelena Belova, Shostakov attempted to use his earpiece to communicate his apology to Romanoff, only for Vostokov to tell him he was not given an earpiece due to only having two at her disposal. Vostokov then explained her and Romanoff's plan. Shostakov, wanting to be more involved, asked Vostokov for a bigger role, only for Taskmaster to appear behind the two of them. Shostakov elected to fight Taskmaster and puts up a good fight, but ultimately gets beaten in the end, with Vostokov having to intervene and save Shostakov from being killed. Vostokov and Shostakov then commandeered a plane and, after waiting for Romanov and Belova, are forced to leave when the hangar is destroyed and the plane falls into the sky. After one of Dreykov's henchmen attempted to board the plane by smashing the windshield, Shostakov, having stolen Taskmaster's shield, throws it at the windshield, killing the henchman. Shostakov and Yelena Vostokov managed to land the plane safely, with Vostokov being slightly injured and Shostakov having to support her. Reuniting with Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova, Romanoff asked Shostakov if he planned on saying anything, but he said that he would just mess it up. However, the two then hold hands, signifying their reconciliation. The four shared a brief moment, but Romanoff then noticed Thaddeus Ross and his crew approaching the scene of the wreckage and alerted them. Shostakov, Vostokov, and Belova told her they would stay and fight them, but Romanoff told them to go and assured them she'd survive. They then left with the newly liberated Black Widows in their aircraft. Antonia Dreykov was born to General Dreykov, leader of the Red Room. Unlike many other young girls whom Dreykov would encounter throughout his life, Antonia was not forced to go through the Red Room Academy and be trained to become a skilled assassin and a member of the Black Widows. Instead, Antonia was actually allowed to attend a school while living in Budapest and maintained a close relationship with her father. Following a day at school, Antonia Dreykov had gone to visit her father at his office in Budapest, where she happily ran up the stairs to greet her father, who was still working at that moment. However, not long after she had arrived, a bomb was detonated in the office, causing a massive fireball caused by Black Widow and Hawkeye, who were attempting to assassinate Dreykov. Despite being right in the middle of the fireball, Antonia and her father barely survived the explosion, with Antonia's face becoming severely disfigured by the flames, much to her father's disgust. Believing her targets dead, Romanoff was haunted by the apparent death of Antonia for years. In order to save Antonia's life and stop her agonizing pain from the damage that she had sustained, Dreykov had inserted a chip into the back of her neck, nulling her senses and giving Dreykov complete control of her. Having survived the bombing that Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton had arranged, Antonia had her emotions and senses disrupted by the chip that Dreykov had inserted into her head. With her under his complete control, Dreykov put his daughter through the Red Room, where he discovered that she had a skill for mimicry and could recreate her enemies' movements by simply studying them closely enough. Over the years, Antonia would successfully complete her training at the Red Room Academy, becoming Dreykov's finest assassin. However, as Dreykov remained disgusted by the burns covering his daughter's face, he had provided her with her suit, including a mask to hide her scars and identity, which also provided her with a HUD to assist with combat. Antonia was given the code name of Taskmaster, becoming the head of the Black Widows under Dreykov's command, who would only send her on the most important missions. To become the superior assassin, Taskmaster would watch footage of the Avengers in combat, studying their fighting styles in order to mimic them in combat. Having learned that Yelena Belova had come across the red dust during a mission to assassinate Oksana and had subsequently escaped with it, General Dreykov chose to recruit Taskmaster to get the red dust back. While Taskmaster had been preparing for her next mission by watching video footage of the fight between Hawkeye and Black Panther, she was interrupted by Lorado, who installed new information into Taskmaster's helmet about the mission. Taskmaster was deployed in Norway to intercept Natasha Romanoff's transportation of the red dust. Taskmaster first attacked the spy by blasting her vehicle off the road with an explosive projectile and proceeded to approach her, but raised her shield to deflect sudden gunfire, then hurled it at the spy and wedged it in her car window before the latter could shoot again in order to obscure her vision. She then retrieved her shield and flipped off of Romanoff's car while blocking more gunfire, until she decided to disarm her of her pistol with a kick. After attempting to throw her shield at Romanoff again, the spy attempted to subdue her with her traditional head-scissor throw, but Taskmaster used the same technique against her, resulting in the both of them lying on the ground. Taskmaster kicked up into a fighting position nearly identical to Romanoff, much to the latter's bewilderment. As Taskmaster attempted to collect the red dust from the crashed car, Romanoff used a grappling hook to tie a wire around her leg, launching Taskmaster into the air. However, Taskmaster then proceeded to use her sword to cut herself free, leaping down behind Romanoff, just as she was attempting to take the red dust for herself. Although Romanoff was able to use the shield to defend herself, Taskmaster was able to kick her off the bridge, before discovering that the red dust had been taken. Taskmaster eventually managed to track down Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova in Budapest, where she and her team of Black Widows ambushed them and began chasing them through the streets. With Romanoff and Belova using a motorbike to drive through the streets, Taskmaster chased them in an armored car, plowing through the other cars in an attempt to catch up. Eventually, Romanoff and Belova got away from Taskmaster, crashing their motorbike in the process. With Romanoff and Belova managing to steal a car, Taskmaster continued to chase them down as she managed to drive behind them before getting out of the roof to get a better look. Taskmaster had then armed herself with her bow and arrows as she used her HUD to line up the perfect shot before shooting an explosive arrow underneath their car, which caused Romanoff and Belova to crash, rolling their car down a flight of stairs and into train station. Taskmaster proceeded to get out of her armored car and followed her targets into the train station, witnessing them pulling themselves out of the crashed car and attempting to flee. As Taskmaster then observed Romanoff and Belova leaping down the stairway, she proceeded to launch her shield after them, which was thrown perfectly down the stairs and barely missed her targets, becoming embedded in a support beam, while Taskmaster still continued to follow her targets. Getting to the bottom of the stairs, Taskmaster had then lost sight of her targets, but observed a trail of blood left behind by the wounded Belova. Taskmaster followed this blood trail, which led her to a manhole cover, which she assumed they had used to get away. Taskmaster then stepped through the manhole and chased down Romanoff and Belova, only to discover that this had been a deception, and Romanoff and Belova had been able to find another way to escape from Taskmaster. Taskmaster was contacted by Milena Vostokov, informing her that Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova had come to her home to seek information against the Red Room, as well as attempting to learn Dreykov's location. Following Vostokov's lead, Taskmaster led her team of agents into Vostokov's home, where they swiftly found and captured Red Guardian, who had been swiftly subdued with multiple tranquilizers being shot directly into his chest. With Taskmaster arriving on board her aircraft, she stepped inside the home, where she discovered that Vostokov had already managed to subdue both Romanoff and Belova, having taken them off guard and used her widow's bike to electrocute them both. Once Taskmaster entered, Vostokov stepped forward, suggesting that they bring Romanoff, Belova, and Red Guardian back to the Red Room Academy, where they could be interrogated and then executed by Dreykov. Having successfully captured her targets, Taskmaster had taken them back to the Red Room Academy, where she put Red Guardian and Natasha Romanoff into their cells. Taskmaster had then returned to General Dreykov's office, where he was greeted by Milena Vostokov, as Taskmaster stood by while Dreykov and Vostokov discussed what would happen to Yelena Belova, who was due to be killed during their experimentations on her mind controlling. However, during the discussion, Taskmaster had then witnessed Dreykov removing the photostatic veil from Vostokov, revealing her to actually be Romanoff in disguise, as part of her attempt to assassinate Dreykov. Although Taskmaster responded by immediately drawing her gun, she was ordered to stand down by Dreykov. Taskmaster then stood by, as Dreykov and Romanoff discussed her past, including the death of Romanoff's mother, which Dreykov showed no sympathy for as he mocked her. In response, Romanoff asked Dreykov if he felt anything when his daughter was seemingly killed when she and Clint Barton had bombed Dreykov's office, unaware of her survival. As the result, Dreykov then turned to Taskmaster and ordered her to remove her helmet, revealing her identity and horrifically scarred face to Romanoff, who was shocked at the revelation, while Dreykov explained how they were able to survive the explosion and how she turned into the Red Room's most skilled assassin. Seeing Romanoff's reaction to Taskmaster's identity, Dreykov had mocked her by asking if she intended to apologize to her, noting that it would not make her feel better. Dreykov had also admitted that he was disgusted by his daughter's burns, which was why he kept her identity hidden behind her helmet. Knowing that Red Guardian was working with Vostokov and Belova to sabotage the Academy, Dreykov sent Taskmaster to assassinate them, as Taskmaster left Romanov and Dreykov alone. Following the orders of Dreykov, Taskmaster went to confront Red Guardian and Yelena Vostokov, who had managed to get out of their cells, and were discussing the next step of their plan to bring down the Red Room Academy. While Vostokov left them alone, Taskmaster faced Red Guardian, who got ready to fight, while Taskmaster drew her claws, based on Black Panther's designs, and they began to fight. During their clash, Taskmaster threw her shield at Red Guardian, who managed to block it, before Taskmaster drew her knife and began slashing at him, using tactics copied from Winter Soldier. Despite Red Guardian's superior strength, Taskmaster was able to use his tactics against him, throwing Red Guardian through a glass wall, before reclaiming her shield and continuing the fight, striking Red Guardian repeatedly and throwing her shield at his back. With Red Guardian struggling to get back onto his feet, Taskmaster walked up behind him and got him into an arm lock, before drawing a hidden blade from her suit, which she attempted to stab into the back of Red Guardian's neck. However, before she could deliver the final blow, Taskmaster was unexpectedly tackled by Vostokov, who threw Taskmaster into one of the cells and locked her inside, leaving Taskmaster furiously punching at the protective glass, angered by the defeat. Taskmaster was left inside her cell by Yelena Vostokov as she witnessed the Red Room Academy beginning to fall out of the sky and explode. However, Taskmaster was eventually discovered by Natasha Romanoff, who told Taskmaster that she could not allow her to die in the Academy, despite knowing that Taskmaster would attempt to kill her. Ignoring the way Taskmaster furiously punched at the protective glass, Romanoff opened the cell door and allowed her to walk free. Taskmaster had then stepped out of her cell and prepared to attack Romanoff, determined to finally get her revenge for the bombing that had scarred her face and destroyed her life. However, before Taskmaster could attack and kill Romanoff, an explosion caused the ceiling between them to collapse, which in turn destroyed the floor underneath Taskmaster, causing her to fall to the level below, while Romanoff was then able to make her escape from the exploding academy. With the Red Room Academy falling from the sky, Taskmaster eventually caught up with Natasha Romanoff, who had just saved Yelena Belova from falling to her death, as they both floated towards the ground with a parachute. Determined to kill Romanoff, Taskmaster had leapt off the academy and dived towards her, armed with her sword, as Romanoff then let go of Belova as she prepared to fight against Taskmaster in midair, using some of the falling debris from the academy to attempt to slow her fall. Taskmaster dived directly at Romanoff, causing them to smash through a falling glass wall while Romanoff punched at her and avoided her sword. As the pair grappled in midair, Romanoff was able to pull Taskmaster's parachute just in time as the pair awkwardly crash-landed on the ground. Getting back onto her feet, Taskmaster had then armed herself with her sword and prepared to kill Romanoff as the pair grappled for control over the sword, with Romanoff managing to take it from Taskmaster. Although Romanoff still refused to kill Taskmaster, dropping the sword on the ground due to the guilt she felt for almost killing her in Budapest, Taskmaster remained determined and furiously grabbed Romanoff by the throat and attempting to strangle her. However, Romanoff was able to break free from Taskmaster's grip and managed to get behind her, pressing buttons on Taskmaster's suit, which caused her helmet to come off, before Romanoff threw Taskmaster down to the ground. However, before Taskmaster could strike at Romanoff again, Romanoff broke the final vial of red dust, causing the powder to hit Taskmaster in the face, freeing her from her mind control. Taskmaster then froze in mid-punch, staring in shock and amazement at Romanoff, having finally regained control of her mind again. Dropping to the ground, Antonia reached out to Romanoff, questioning if Dreykov was dead, which Romanoff confirmed, as he had been killed in an earlier explosion. With Dreykov dead and the Red Room destroyed, Antonia was unsure what she would do next. They were then rejoined by the surviving members of the Widows, who had also been freed from Dreykov's mind control. Having been given the opportunity to build new lives for themselves, the Widows took Antonia into their care, with Lorato helping Antonia onto her feet and bringing her on board the plane they used to escape before the authorities had arrived.